Hello everyone, my name's Beth Griggs and I work for IBM in their Node.js runtimes team. I'm kind of an open source engineer. I get to spend about 50% of my time contributing to Node Core or some projects around the Node.js org. The rest of my time is kind of looking at IBM Cloud and deployment techniques for cloud. I'm a Node.js member, and what I'm going to be talking about today is what's new to long-term support in Node 12. So Node 12 went into long-term support on Monday. And just for those of you who may not know, Node.js follows a release schedule. And the main factor of that is that every year we do 2 major releases. Even-numbered releases will graduate to long-term support, odd ones will not. And we've just gone from the current to active transition for Node 12, and Node 13 was released yesterday. So that's where we are. What current means is all the fixes and features that land on master will be backported into that release. Active, we're a bit more picky. We look at the stable features and all bug fixes. So just to summarize the last slide, this slide, odd number of releases don't graduate to LTS, even ones do. Current gets all fixes and features from master. Active gets all features and fixes, but we're a bit more picky. We actually audit every single commit individually and say, should this go back into LTS? Has it been known to cause any problems? So we do try to honor our long-term support with greater stability. And maintenance, you will only get severe bug fixes and security fixes. Sometimes there's a little bit of leeway to pull back features that might help migration onto newer release lines, but that's the general stance that we have. And Node 12 went LTS on Monday. So this means you can start using it in production. I advise you not to use current releases in production because they're not stable, and we don't make so many guarantees about the stability. I'll just swap over onto this. So yeah, went to LTS on Monday. It will be active LTS for 12 months. So it will continue to have new features and fixes for a year, and then it will have 18 months worth of maintenance. And we've actually flipped this. They used to get 18 months worth of new features, but now it's only 12, and that's due to the deltas in release lines. It's just too hard to keep up. So after 12 months, it's so out of sync with master that pulling anything back into the, for example, Node 12 branch will just be too difficult. So we've swapped those around, but we're still honoring the 30 months of support for long-term release lines. And it will go end of life April 2022. So it's a good version to be using and thinking about using now, because that buys you 2.5 years worth of support. And there's a good blog article on Node.js Foundation, which will detail some of the features, but I'll go through some of the notable ones now. First, V8 was updated to V8.7.7. That came with mainly making things faster. So async stack traces, faster calls with argument mismatch, faster await, faster JavaScript parsing. So it was pretty much all about speed. And we also had ES6 module support. This is currently behind the flag experimental modules. So you have to pass that to your node process to be able to use it at the moment. And what this provides is things like exports, so import-export statements. We are considering in the LTS team about whether we should unflag this in Node 12, and that may happen in the future, but it's still a discussion and in progress. We also have diagnostic reports in Node 12. They're also experimental behind the flag experimental report. And if anyone's ever worked with Java, this kind of lets you create things like core faults. It's basically a report that gives you information perhaps when your process crashes about the state of the stack and things like that. So it's there to help you diagnose problems and crashes. I think the idea is normally that, say you experience a crash in production, you turn this flag on, you run the same processes against, and then you would actually have some information to debug that crash. And actually, this PR was probably one of the most commented on PRs of all time in Node. It had like almost 1,000 comments. And where this feature came from, there was an external module called Node Report in the Node Foundation, and not many people were using it. So to help diagnostics, we thought if we merge it into core and put it there by default, then maybe more people will use it, and the module will get more adoption. Also in Node 12, we had heap size configuration changes. So at the moment, in Node 11 and prior, the JavaScript heap space would just be given some set defaults from V8, and these defaults were based on browser defaults. So it was like 700 meg for 32-bit and 64-bit was 1400 meg. So these were defaults from the browser, but it didn't really make sense. So some changes have gone into Node 12 that means that Node will actually look at the available memory and then allocate that to the process. So it's not using more than what's available. And I think this has been particularly useful for people using Node in Docker containers. Obviously, you can limit their memory, and by default, the heap space will be assigned that much memory. More features in Node 12, worker threads are stable. So I don't know if anyone's worked with worker threads, but use those to offload heavy processes in your Node code. Private class fields, source map support, TLS 1.3 support. The default max protocol is now TLS 1.3. We have npm 6.12 in Node 12 at the moment. And this comes with Python 3 support for Node.js. So it means you can build native add-ons with Python 3. And the default parser was switched to LLHTTP. This was done for maintainability reasons. And Node 13 got released yesterday. 13.00. 13.01 came out today because the release was a little bit flaky. The actual issue was that we normally coordinate with NPM, and NPM maintains a list of supported release lines, and Node 13 wasn't in there yet, so when you typed npm install, everyone got a warning saying Node 13 wasn't supported. But we've patched that, and 13.01 was released this morning. And to be honest, the main feature, the big feature for me in this is it builds with full ICU by default, so you don't need to install ICU separately. And just a public service announcement, Node 8 goes end of life at the end of this year. It's actually going end of life 4 months sooner than we anticipated according to our release schedule. And that's because the version of OpenSSL that's bundled with Node 8 actually goes end of life at the end of this year. So we've brought the Node.js end of life to align with that. So yeah, from after in 2020, you will get no security fixes or bug fixes on a Node 8 release line. And just 2019 in numbers for Node Core, we've got like 2,500 contributors now. We've had 3,000 pull requests this year, 40 plus releases. And this takes a lot of work. So if anyone's interested in getting involved, reviewing PRs, helping triage issues, helping with the releases, or helping maintain our build infrastructure, feel free to reach out. There's definitely more work to do. So please reach out to me. And yeah, thank you for listening to my talk.